Hi, welcome to this video. Thanks for tuning in. I'm just going to go into a little bit of flow in my car with my beautiful tie-dye background. How are we doing? I haven't flowed in the car for a while on video, so I just roll into using my environment and the messages that are coming through, and I just play with it a little bit. So little light languages wanting to come through. And our environment is radically shifting. Our environment is radically changing as we enter into our new kingdom, if you will. As we enter into, I'm seeing a dome, but I'm also seeing the obviously a kingdom, a dome. I'm hearing Adam, like it's the new beginning, right? And many of us become leaders. We step up to the plate, if you will. We begin this as a new precipice. We are on a precipice. We are beginning to press upon. I'm hearing press into the pace, pick up the pace, precipice, play on words. And we tune in to this new archaeological divide, for it does feel divided in this particular placement, if you will, this particular place, space, and time in this now moment. Yet we also remind you that there is never really true division. It only feels that way as the tables are turned and what is underneath is revealed. For as the tables have turned, we see the upturn, the upstroke, the uptide, the changing tides, and we move into a different, I'm hearing tithe. That's a lot of plays on words right there. We change and churn with the coming tides. We churn up that which has been held within these certain times tables, if you will. And I'm just tuning into the sound behind the sound, and I'm hearing collapsing timetables, the collapsing times. And I'm seeing someone throwing salt over their shoulder. I guess you do that for good luck. That, I guess, is symbolic somehow. I'll have to come back to that. For as we tune into what is available with us in this great divide, we are then able to devise up a higher schematic. We are then able to divide up the blueprint in such a way that it becomes indivisible. Plays on words here. We tune into, I'm seeing people not using their signals. I see that as symbolic, right? We change the tables, we change the multiple facets, the multiplication, the multiple implications are then revealed. For as we open and access the many platelets, I've talked about this before, that are now available, we turn the tables. I'm seeing like spinning like a DJ, turning the tables, and we pick up certain elemental clauses, if you will, elemental designs, if you will, that allow us to embed deeper into a different design. It allows us to alchemize and move into a higher design. For the circumferentry board that we are now in access with, play on words, we are accessing with, we are in an axis with, like AXIS, holds within it a time scale. It allows us to up the tables, if you will. It allows us to tune into a deeper scale, if you will. And again, if you will is a lot of like plays on words too, like we're willing it to be so, and if we choose to, but also it's like from one perspective, if we could look at it many different ways. this space for a moment. It's big. This massive scale. And I'm seeing that we're scaling up these walls. We're outscaling. We're scaling up these walls, and we're creating balance for those who know not what lies beneath. For what lies beneath is being exposed, is churning up I'm hearing making an appearance, if you will. So I've talked about this in a few videos now. I kept seeing, I'm hearing a splicing has occurred. Splicing. I'm just gonna play with this. This is fun. So bear with me if you haven't seen these videos before. I haven't done one like this in a while, and it requires me just to play a little bit more and be aware of what I'm looking at while I'm driving. It's like multi-dimensional mindfulness in all areas. I'm hearing acrobatic techniques. And then as I say that, I'm hearing acrobatic techniques, which has to do with the message bringers, the shapeshifters, the crow, medicine. And that is the brain, by the way, the skull. It has to do with the sphenoid bone. It has to do with this realignment. Being able to tune into multiple dimensions at the same time and hone in on those bandwidths in such a way that we're still present with what's happening in front of us. And that's part of the message. So I was talking about the plasma being uplifted from the earth, and there's a lot of energy, and we could call it beings or entities that I had seen. Essentially what I'm hearing is they were laid waste to. So it's like they were laid, and I'm hearing below, like below the waist, like waist deep. Play on words. And then what happens is all of that stuff is coming up, because if you look at harmonics and music and somatics, I think it's called that, if I'm saying not somatics like film, cymatics. So it's basically the energy of music and sound, like binaural beats. And if you put salt on a speaker and you play a certain harmonic, it makes a certain shape. If you guys don't know what that is, I encourage you to look it up, because it's really, I'm at a stoplight. It's really cool, and it just gives you an idea of how our reality is spliced together, is put together, is vibrated into being. And it's almost like the sound behind the sound. You start to hear these geometries. You start to see the geometries in a very different way than what how we're possibly used to interacting with it. And what's happening is, when it vibrates, it shakes everything and brings it up so that it can be integrated, dissolved. So I keep seeing that this is going to continue. So there may be, we might be seeing a lot of things that have been here the whole time, but they've been held down from one perspective. They've been, from another perspective, the vibration wasn't such that they could escape. And now it's all coming up. And as it comes up, I'm basically hearing it's not something we can escape from. And we don't want to. We want to be able to face this. We want to be able to interact with certain frequencies. And some of us are here on purpose in order to interact with these frequencies so that they can be processed, so that they can be acknowledged. And yeah, so I'm going to go back into that a little bit. So that this can be so that we can access the fuller potential of sound harmonics. So if you have a clog in something, it muffles the sound. But as this energy is escaping that was clogged, it then helps the sound to be carried farther. So I see a lot of different variations here. Number one, I could call it ghosts. I'm seeing ghosts or plasma projections or stuck energy. It's like I'm seeing this in reference to being held within the earth. I'm seeing it as maybe entities that were maybe stuck to bodies. We could see it as dis-ease, or perhaps energy that's stuck in the body and we don't have to label it as an entity, right? Because really, what is an entity? Sometimes we think of that as, ooh, a scary thing. Well, it's just stuck energy from another perspective. It holds a frequency. So what's happening is what we're doing now is we're enabling a certain frequency to be moved so that it's not stuck. And I keep hearing the message, no person left behind kind of thing. It's like the energies that were left behind are now being released. And this is a good thing. And we're going to start seeing from one perspective what that looks like, what it feels like. So it can be us on an energetic level. It could represent an attachment that we have to a particular reality. It could represent our own entities or things that we've given power to that have taken on habitual shape as far as relationships go. And it could literally be entities. So the biggest thing that's coming up is let's stay out of fear about this and recognize that all is energy. So when we see certain things coming up, we don't have to label it as good or bad, and we don't have to attach ourselves to that frequency just because we are acknowledging that it's there. Does that make sense? We don't always have to interact with it, but for some of these frequencies, we want to interact with them because it gives us a fuller expression of life. And I keep hearing rife frequencies, right? And it gives also, I talked about this in my previous video about the clouds, it gives us more depth perception. So we're able to perceive things at a deeper level. And it makes us more adept at acknowledging things that maybe were hidden. And we start to realize that what we what we want, what we don't want. And it's okay to acknowledge these things as part of our reality without saying, okay, well, that's mine, that belongs to me. But at the same time, it's taking responsibility for what does belong to us. So again, it comes back to boundaries. It means not taking on other people's crap, but also acknowledging if we have done that in the past as a habitual frequency and pattern, it's going to show up for us. We don't have to continue to do that, but it's also not avoiding things that we've been avoiding. So who does it belong to kind of thing. For much that has been locked within these frequency domains is being split, if you will. So I'm seeing the energy going in different directions. When this split occurs from one perspective, and I'm hearing ocular gravitation, that's probably a play on words, like it causes us to look towards, that's one aspect of it, and we're pulled towards it, we gravitate towards it, we look at it. But what I'm hearing also is macular degeneration. So that's one direction, and then another direction is going, okay, that's all a play on words, by the way. So some of these subsets that are being exposed are causing this macular degeneration. We're not seeing things the way that we should, right? We're not seeing what they really represent because our vision has degenerated from one perspective. But this is all a play on words. I'll have to play with that a little bit more. But then what happens is we can see where we're gravitating towards. We're looking at it from a different perspective, right? That's that ocular function. There's so much more. And this allows us to create from a different vision, from a different visionary board. So for those of us who have done vision boards in the past, it's not It's not about us. It's about us envisioning from who we are now and not going backwards and creating from where we were. I know a lot of this is very coded, but it's layers and layers and layers. So as we step into this new frame, we are then able to clear out this debris. As the split occurs, we can see where the energy was sourced from, and we are able to clearly dictate, play on words, and play with these new frequencies. So I'm seeing splitter technology. And as we allow ourselves to sink into these new rhythms, so some of us are sinking down, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, if that makes sense, because we're pulling more stuff up with us that can then be processed and utilized for more depth perception, for a deeper essence of who we aren't and who we are and all of that. And some of us are sinking up, and many of us are doing both at the same time by expanding out. So this essentially allows us to SYNC, sink into this new reality structure, and it allows us to blow out the old mainframe and blow up into expansion. And as this collapse begins to, I'm hearing, sink in, like we're finally, many of us are going to be like, oh, this is really going down. This is how it's going to go down. Oh, okay. We start to then recognize that we are not who we thought we were. Many of us will remember who we really are and to what size and scale we have the potential of climbing, of acclimating to, of accliming. Play on words. And I'm hearing that this changes our entire environment and climate in which we are used to, that we were acclimated to, that we are essentially acclimating to. So we're climbing this mountain, we're climbing this building, we're climbing up, and in doing that, we get more of that bird's eye view of what's underneath us. And sometimes we actually just fall back into it and then come up. What is that scene? There's a scene from the movie. I'm seeing Thelma and Louise. It's not Thelma and Louise, but it might feel like Thelma and Louise. That's an old movie. I haven't watched that in years. Spoiler alert, I won't give away the ending of that movie, but oh my gosh. So it's gonna feel a little bit like that. But then it's like the car actually floats. Gosh, there's so much. Anyways, as we disband these old bandwidths and we recognize that we are truly tuning into a new orchestra, that we are truly tuning into a new orchestration, that we are truly turning into, I'm hearing upside down, like inside out, like we're totally different. We find ourselves moving away from all of the loud noises, all of the orchestration that is no longer orchestrated. It is falling apart. I'm hearing domination. And so we must continue to balance the scales and make the appropriate harmonic adjustments that are necessary for our full inclusion, play on words, so that we do not move deeper into illusion or disillusion, play on words. So it's like delusion, basically, is what I'm saying. So we don't move into delusion, we move out of that, and then we are able to hone in on this deeper pattern recognition. For when we recognize what it is that we are really seeing, we can make the inclusive adjustments so we're not leaving anything out. I'm also seeing this in reference inclusion. There's more to that. There's more clues in that inclusion. So in the clues at the ionic level, scion, so much. So we then allow ourselves to propagate in a forward motion And I'm seeing us all linking up and holding arms together without, it's just like standing our ground. And this creates the inclusive ability to share our frequency in such a way that it becomes bossy. So I'm playing with that, bossy. I think I'm supposed to spell that differently. This is fun. I've been playing like this in a while on video. So essentially, it's like we're the boss of ourselves, but we're not bossing others around. We're just, it's more of a play on words like the Bose sound system. I'll play with that a little bit. And we see through all that is being projected through a clairvoyant landscape. So many of us, I've talked about this before, our clairvoyance is really coming online for a lot of people. And many times it's just been drowned out by this noise. And the noise has become quite invasive. But we're no longer listening to just that. We recognize that it's there, we hear it, but we're hearing and seeing what's behind it. So that's awesome. It may seem at times that that is not the case, but we are constantly being uplifted and reminded in little ways. And it's important for us to give ourselves permission. And I'm hearing, so that we don't fall from grace. And that has to do with us, getting disappointing in us. Losing face is what I'm hearing. So don't be so hard on ourselves. We don't have to be so hard on others. We don't have to be, it's not like we're part of this in club and nobody else is allowed in. That's that inclusiveness. It's everyone. So, but it's not being bossy and telling others what to do. We're just being the boss of ourselves, and we're not getting pulled in all of these different directions and told what to do. That's the old point of view. That's the old perspective. We're instead, each one of us, managing ourselves, managing our bodies, managing our time, managing where we focus, becoming our own boss. And then this allows us to see what we need and what we don't need. And this is different for everyone. Not everyone needs the same thing at the same time. So this is where being one can sometimes be misunderstood, and therefore our idea about being one, what one really is our projections of that are miscalculated. So this goes back to the beginning where I said our times tables have changed, and I've talked about that a lot. What I keep seeing is, like, if you see a table of elements, our table of elements that we have to work with are much bigger than what we had before. Our mathematical frequencies that we have the ability to play with are different. And this has to do with geometry encodements. This has to do with everything. So this will start to be more obvious in a less linear way. So we're starting to tap into the sounds of the universe that are full of codes. And as we crack open these codes, these beautiful gifts are going to start coming out, whether it's technology, whether it's new information, which I'm seeing it happen all the time. It's just not being projected in the mainstream. I get those little alerts all the time talking about the cosmos and, you know, things that many of you, what you and I know already exists. Now it's kind of being sprinkled out all of the time, and it's not as taboo perhaps as it once was. It's like, yeah, oh, guess what? The Big Bang may not be how the universe started. Oh, really? And all of this other information is starting to come up because it hasn't been able to, I'm just hearing it was it's being decentralized. Ooh, that's a whole other can of worms there. So essentially, we're creating our own center, and it's not somebody else that's projecting all this information. I'm seeing like an organized frequency that was created to disband the frequency of our own power, personal power, right? Well, that now has been decentralized, and now we each are our own